Good afternoon, members. Oh, we've just got Councillor Jordan. Sorry, I was just waiting for Councillor Jordan to join the meeting, but she's just joined, so I'll proceed. First of all, I'd like to ask members to appoint a chair for the remainder of these reconvened items, please. Councillor Drysdale.
Good afternoon, members. Yes, please. Thank you very much. I'd like to propose Councillor Barretti, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Barretti, would you like to accept that?
Happy to accept.
Thank you. If members could just give us a minute for Councillor Barretti to move up to the top table. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Just give me a few seconds. I'll get myself organised.
While you're doing that, Chair, I'll just confirm that we are quorate. We've got 3 members present, so that's the Chair, Councillor Barretti, Councillor Drysdale and Councillor Jordan are present on Microsoft Teams. We had apologies submitted in advance from Councillor Marshall and Councillor Walters, and as noted at the previous local review body, Councillor Howie is no longer a member of the local review body. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you very much, Tracy. It was just a quick question. I actually read the papers online last night for the case at Auchencairn, but I don't have a black and white copy in front of me. I wondered if you would be able to, sorry to inconvenience you, could you send me them to my private email, because my screen on my phone is much better, if that's possible. If not, I have read the papers and made some notes, so I should be okay, but it's just in case anything particular came up. And I have got the papers for the Les Walk Garden Centre application, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. I did email you them. I did respond to your email just prior to the meeting starting this afternoon. Hopefully you've received it. If not, drop me another message.
That's great. Thank you, Tracy. I'll just access it now. That's fantastic. Thanks for your help. Your help, pardon me.
Right, members, I'll just bring Robert in to give us an update on where we are and then go on from there.
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify, this application was considered by the Council's local review body at their meeting on the 15th of May this year, where members undertook that they would undertake an accompanied site visit to the property, which was later confirmed to take place at 11 AM on Wednesday, the 3rd of September 2025. So that was this morning. The local review body advised that they wanted to undertake the site visit to allow them to look at the location and the field being used to build the dwelling house. What are the constraints? Why at this location? Why not closer to the steading? So the members present at the previous meeting on the 15th of May were Councillors Ian Crothers, Tony Barretti, Ian Howie, Pauline Drysdale, Emma Jordan, Sean Marshall and Keith Walters. This morning I assembled at the site with the following parties in attendance: Councillor Pauline Drysdale, Councillor Emma Jordan, Councillor Tony Barretti, Tracy Sonko as LRB Clerk, myself there as Independent Planning Advisor, Alan Nish, who's Planning Agent on behalf of the applicant, and Mr and Mrs Wallace, who are the applicants for this case. At the site visit, members looked at the steading. Now, there was reference made to the information contained within the papers at pages 77, 79, 80 and 81, which was submitted on behalf of the applicant, showing the kind of location of the steading and the various uses for that, and also some reasoning behind the location of the dwelling house. But there was no discussion of the merits of the case. It was a chance for members to observe the steading, the uses of that building, and also to look at the actual application site itself. And in the way back to the main road after the meeting, all of the people present stopped to have a look at the actual application site itself. It was very wet, but I think the members got a lot out of it today. So that's really the summary of what happened. You're now back at this reconvened meeting to look at how you wish to proceed to go forward with this case. For example, if you want to undertake further procedure, or if you're minded to undertake or arrive at a decision today, but the clerk will cover that in more detail. Thanks, Chair.
I'll just hand over to Tracy. Members.
Thank you, Chair. So, as this is a reconvened meeting, I'll not go through everything that we went through at the last meeting in May, where we went through each index of contents individually. I'll just briefly go over the main issues for the local review body to consider. Obviously, you've already undertaken a site visit, but like Robert's already said, that doesn't mean that you can't carry out any other further procedures. So I'll just read out the main issues for members to consider today. This is an application for planning permission in principle, and as such there are no detailed matters relating to the proposed dwelling house. Scottish Government Planning Circular 3/2022, Development Management Procedures, provides that it is for the applicant to decide what level of detail they wish to provide when making an application for planning permission in principle. It also advises that it is open to planning authorities to require further information under Regulation 24, further regulation where necessary to determine the application. This can include details of the proposed dwelling house. It is noted that such a request has not been made during the consideration of the application by the case officer. Would members wish to request further details of the proposal via a procedure notice, or would members be happy to consider this case without any further such details of the dwelling house, noting that it's an application for planning permission in principle? There was a site visit request from the applicant's agent, which was carried out this morning. There is also the option for members to carry out hold hearing sessions in this case. It's recognised that this process would need to be the subject of formal procedure notice to all relevant parties, setting out the hearing arrangements at a future date. Does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LTP2, Policy H3 and MPF4, Policy 17 and the associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside? In particular, noting that the site is located in the countryside area and is not within or adjacent to an existing settlement, has an overriding, justified and compelling site-specific need been made for this proposed development at this particular location? Does the proposal represent sporadic development in the countryside? If it is considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? For the avoidance of doubt, the representations that appear in pages 69 to 72 of the published papers were late representations, in the sense that they were received out with the relevant deadline for such representations to be received. It does fall to the local review body to take these representations into account when making their determination as material considerations. How much weight would members wish to give these late presentations when determining the case? If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? If members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required, and which additional policies, if any, would be referenced? Members did, at the meeting in May, agree to go into private session to discuss the exempt papers. So members have that option again today. If they wish to discuss that again, then please let us know and we can stop the live feed and go into private session. So the options available to the local review body today are to decide that you have sufficient information to enable you to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations, stating precisely the information you're seeking and who will provide it, resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who will be invited to speak and on what matters, If the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information and that no further procedure is required, then the local review body has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. Your planning advisor is present. It's confirmed that he did not have any involvement in the case prior to submission of the notice of review, and he was not the case officer or the appointed officer. He is here to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning policy, law or process. Solicitor is also present today and she will act independently if the local review body require any specific advice on matters of law. So I'll now pass back to the Chair and ask him to continue to lead the debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. Members, at this point, do we have sufficient information today to proceed? Councillor Drysdale and then Councillor Jordan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do believe we have sufficient information to proceed. Thank you.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and I'm in agreement with Councillor Drysdale. Thank you.
Okay. Right. As there's only the three of us here, do you wish just to both of you leave your video on so then I can see if you do want to come in, you can just raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you for that to members. I'll just quickly check with Tracy, okay? I think we... sorry, Emma, you've got a hand up.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask, and I'm sure it's a naive question, and please tell me if it's inappropriate, but as far as I understand it, the planning permission at the moment is not, there's no plans to it. And so I wanted to ask, if we approved this, if we had a discussion and decided to approve it, would there then need to be any further plans submitted to work out what type of property is built there, or could anything be built there? And if we were to decline the planning application today after discussion, could a new plan be submitted with an idea of what type of property wants to be built there? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. It is in principle, but I'll just hand over to Robert to give you that very specific.
Thanks, Chair. Happy to advise. What you're looking at today is an application for planning permission in principle. So when you undertook the site visit, the application site was the broad location for the intended dwelling house. So the application is testing the principle of a single dwelling house at that particular location. There aren't any details at this point in time relating to that application. Now, as the clerk explained, you do have the option of asking for those details to make a consideration if you feel that that level of detail is necessary. But really what you're looking at here, if you're reminded, for example, to grant planning permission in principle, there would need to be a following application known as an approval of matters specified in conditions, which then fills out the detail of the proposal. So it's a two-step process basically in that scenario. You grant permission for the principle of the development at the location. In this case, it's a single dwelling house. The second application would then submit the details of that proposed dwelling house for consideration. In the event that the decision of the appointed officer was upheld, it would be open to the applicant to make a further application, and that could then be in principle, or it could be a detailed full planning application. It would be up to them.
Pauline.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. It was just to confirm that is my understanding as to the position we're in at the moment, whereby this is planning permission in principle after the site visit. So under Regulation 24, the council themselves, the planning department and their team would have additional powers once the plans were received from the applicant and full details would be given to the council. And from my point of view, that would give anyone in the local area the chance, if they wanted to propose it or object to it, plenty of time if that procedure was followed correctly, which it will be. I do put the council in full charge and have trust in them to follow that procedure properly. So I personally would be happy to discuss this case today as it stands. So just for the planning in principle, now that we've completed the site visit, Chair. So at whichever point you deem it suitable, we could go on to have that debate. But obviously I would need to see what yourself and Councillor Jordan thought as to where I'm coming from. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm in agreement with you, but I'll just quickly, very quickly, confirm with Robert that that is the case, okay?
Thanks, Chair. You're absolutely fine to go ahead on that basis. It's an application for planning permission in principle. There's no details with it at this stage. It's perfectly legitimate for you to go ahead and make a decision today. The only point would be that any further application in relation to details would be made in the wake of this application if planning permission in principle is granted.
On that basis, we'll just go directly into the debate, and what I will do, rather than giving any response at the moment, I'll ask Councillor Drysdale, do you want to start with your reflections of today in your opinion?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was very pleased to be able to attend the site today, and I felt that the actual presentation, well, tour that we were given of the farm is really, really helpful. I can't speak on behalf of other councillors, but it really put my mind more at ease with regards to the type of farming that took place there and the importance of it within Dumfries and Galloway and the west of the region. And I've thought long and hard about this, and in my eyes, I don't think that it's contrary to National Framework MPF 4, policy LDP 2, policy H3, housing in the countryside, as we were able to see with the case that there was a justified successful succession planning in front of us, whether we're at that stage of the debate yet, but these are just my thoughts, Chair. And I felt that it wasn't contrary to LDP 2 policy H3, as there's a definite need for the requirement of this for the succession planning for some sort of home. Particularly, I was pleased to hear that potentially it could be a presentation for a one-storey home that would be in keeping with the scale and density of the other homes in the region, and definitely that a rural location was preferable to be able to continue the succession of this family business. But whether that's material enough, I would take you as chair for more, detailed information, and particularly through the case officer here today. But I felt it was helpful, and I feel there is a justifiability for us to be able to depart from the officer's initial recommendation in this instance. But it would be interesting to see, and very important, that the next, if it went through today, the next particular plans were in keeping. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Emma. Okay.
Thank you again, Chair. And I'm in agreement with Councillor Drysdale in that it was very useful to go and see the farm. And I agree with Councillor Drysdale, really, because I felt that the way that the area was, I felt that it would fit in, that it wouldn't necessarily be out of character to be put there. There are already 2 cottages there, then there are the farm buildings. So I felt that it wouldn't necessarily be out of keeping with the area. Obviously, Councillor Drysdale has said that anything that is, if it were to go ahead, anything to be built there ought to be kept within the character of the surroundings anyway. And I think that, because we were looking at other places, where that I think was one of the things, where other places where this dwelling could have been built, but I didn't really see any. I think it's not that far from the farm, really, and I didn't really see any suitable places where it could be built, but I'm happy to be corrected and happy to hear others' thoughts at the moment. Thank you.
So, Councillor, Jordan, you're in favour of the planning in principle in that sense, are you not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm I think so. I'm not yet fully decided, but I think, I don't like the idea of us building properties in our countryside if they're not necessary. But I think that a building there, quite close to the other cottages, still not far from the farm with all of the farm buildings, I wouldn't say uh, I think that would be kind of sort of part of the development. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Drysdale, you elaborated quite reason for that. Now, are you willing just to specify to Robert here for verification of that decision? And it is unfortunate that there's only 3 of us here, so I am going to agree with Councillor Drysdale on her analysis of the site visit. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. With Robert's guidance, I'll try and prepare my statement, and then my fellow councillors can further look at it once Robert's helped me with the wording and the legalities. If we need the council legal team as well to provide extra help for me here, I would be very grateful, because I don't want to get this wrong. As you can probably understand, it's quite important. So I'm going to propose that we overthrow the refusal of this permission because I believe it's not contrary to MPF 4 policy H3 housing in the countryside, for 2 reasons. We can see a justifiable need for the extra house, the bungalow, as to provide successful succession planning, and 2, that it's not contrary to LDP2 policy H3, as it does require to be sited in a rural location. So the only thing, through yourself, Chair, I would ask Robert is, within that, can we include, I probably need to look deeper at MPF policy 17, but I don't know if what I've given you already is enough, if that makes sense.
I'll just find out from Robert. Okay, Robert.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. If it's helpful, the decision taken by the Council's appointed officer appears on page 140 of your papers, and I'm sure you've looked at this. So this is crystallising the reason for the decision taking, and it says, as a result of the siting of the proposed development, so that's the key issue, the siting of this proposed dwelling house, it would lead to sporadic development in the countryside, and there is no overriding justified need for the development in this specific location. So really for me it's all about the location. Now, you undertook the site visit this morning. The applicant explained how the steading worked. It was really quite useful to see it there. He also pointed out an existing house nearby, and also which land he had control of and which location he didn't have control of. And you've obviously looked at this application site, and if you're minded to think that this actually, if the siting of this proposed development is not a concern to you and you think there is a justified need there and it wouldn't be sporadic development in the countryside, then in your view it would comply with the policies that I mentioned, because those are the specific areas where there's considered to be conflict with that policy by the appointed officer. So I think the decision would be based on those facts, but it would need to try and address the kind of first part of the reason for refusal on page 140. So you would need to say, why you thought the location was considered to be acceptable. Beyond that, and again I'm looking back to my notes in May, because it's a planning permission principle application, there's a range of conditions that could be applied. Now, I've thought around that before, but I can come back on that once you've maybe come up with further thoughts about the wording for the decision. But like you say, if you're going down that route, that would be overturning the decision of the Council's appointed officer in this case.
Is that helpful, Councillor Drysdale?
It is. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Robert. It is helpful. So I think if we're minded to all agree that it's not overriding sporadic development because of the business plan and because of our site visit today, whereby we saw, how can I describe it, in terms of spatial management, the farm itself was surrounded almost completely by buildings that were required for both sheep and management of beef cattle, as well as grain storage, wheat storage, all the other types of buildings that were needed on a farm. Having visited many farms in my day since I became a councillor, you often visit a farm and immediately walk in and see a building that could be easily repurposed as a 1-storey, a 1.5-storey, or a 2-storey home. The debates that we had today we didn't even have debates because that's not allowed, but the discussions, or we didn't have discussions, so sorry, I take that back. We were presented with how the farm operates. It was very clear to see that vehicles need to come in and out all the time into all these different parts of the farm. So it wouldn't be possible to build there. So I'm not uncomfortable with it being slightly out with. And as Councillor Jordan has said, it's not as far away as I perceived it might have been, and nor is it too overseen. So I don't quite know how to word it through yourself, Chair. I don't know if Robert could give me some guidance, but something to do with it's not sporadic development as in its normal sense, because it is part of the succession planning of the farm, and the current farm buildings wouldn't be able to encompass another building in or around it. So sorry, I'm probably overcomplicating it, but I don't know how best to word it. Sorry. It's very difficult when you're not a planning officer.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm kind of thinking in exactly the same way, but I'll let Emma come in first.
Thank you, Chair, again, and thank you, Councillor Drysdale and Robert, for your input. I agree, everything that we've said is, and I really agree with you, Councillor Drysdale, when you say it's very difficult to put into words in planning language when you're not an expert, and that's where I really struggle, because it says in the decision on page 140, the reason for the decision is on 140 for the decision, is that there's no overriding justified need for the development in a specific location. As such, the proposal is contrary to particular national planning framework 4. I would say it says it would lead to sporadic development. I don't consider that. I think that it does fit in already with the development around. It's not like it's just in the middle of nowhere. It is close to the buildings already. So I think that's an important. I don't believe that it's an additional building in the middle of nowhere. I think that it is fitting in with the sort of landscaping there with the buildings and everything already. And I do think it's needed because it's going to house someone who's going to work, or who does work on the farm, and does a lot of hours, and would help the security and the running and the welfare of the farm as well. Again, I apologise because I can't speak. I'm not very good at explaining in planning language, but hoping that, Robert, you can sort of pull out some of the things from what we've said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You did okay there, so I will pass to Robert.
I mean, the things I'm picking up in what you're saying, and correct me if I'm going wrong here, is you're fairly satisfied that the site of the dwelling house is fairly close to the farm unit where the need arises for the additional worker to stay. You're also of the view that the farm steading itself is fully operational and engaged, if you like, and there's not an obvious opportunity to repurpose a redundant or underused building. You're also aware that other housing opportunities on the unit are taken up at the moment, and that you feel that the site that we looked at today, the application site, isn't unduly uncharacteristic of the kind of pattern of buildings in the locality. So it's fairly close to the steading. Steading doesn't give opportunities, and when you look at the pattern of existing buildings round about, it's not contrary to that, because we saw some of the buildings just to the north of it. I think the two kind of cottages they were described as were in a similar location. So on the basis of that, you feel that you don't have a problem with the siting of the proposed development nor the use of it, and you actually do feel there is a need for the development in this specific location. And because that's kind of the inverse of the appointed officer's stated reasons to refuse the application, I think you have to then say that you believe that it's not contrary to the policies that have been listed, because the decision is so specific to those particular points. It's not just the generality of it, it's in relation to the actual siting of the proposed development at that location. So I don't know if that helps, Clark, but those are certainly my observations on it just now.
We'll go to Tracy. I think she has some wording for this.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Robert, as well. That was helpful. I've just made some notes, so I'll put this to Councillor Drysdale and Jordan and yourself, Chair. I'm hearing that members are minded to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve the application, as there is a justifiable business need that's been demonstrated through the business plan and the succession planning for the need of business within this rural location. And given there are already other dwelling houses and buildings within the vicinity, nor is there another suitable location on the fully operational farmsteading site for the proposed dwelling, this would not lead to sporadic development in the countryside and would comply with MPF 4 Policy 17 and Dumfries and Gully Local Development Plan 2 Policy H3 and supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside. I'll put that to Robert first if he's happy with that wording.
I think that reflects the discussion quite well, yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Drysdale, I'll ask you first. Are you happy with those wording?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Tracy and Robert. I do think that encompasses everything that we've been trying to see. And the only other question I had through yourself, Chair, was for Robert, if it's okay. I know we can't talk about what's going to come forward should we agree this today, but can you just describe to us before we proceed, if the Chair feels that's applicable? You were talking about some sort of conditions that could be put in now. Can you just talk us through that? Was that to do with perhaps a maximum height of it only being 1 storey or 1.5 stories, or the building materials so that the pallet, etc., is in keeping with other buildings in the area, or has that got to come at phase 2? Were you talking about different conditions just before we proceed? Because I don't know if we need to incorporate them into what the Clark Tracy has said. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. I can see Councillor Jordan nodding her head in agreement, but I will go straight to Robert just to finalise that.
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify with the conditions, because it's a planning permission in principle application, the conditions would need to reflect that. So certainly I can offer advice, because I've thought around this one previously in my notes for the earlier meeting, because it's always a possibility that a decision gets overturned. So the first condition I would recommend would be the fairly standard time condition for implementing the planning permission in principle, which basically requires the further application for approval of matters specified in conditions to be submitted within 3 years. So that's the kind of stage 2 application, if you like, to flesh out the detail. And then you've got a period of time, I think it's 2 years from that before the actual planning permission in principle expires, but that's basically to set out timescales. The second recommended condition would be to look at the detail being required in matters specified in conditions applications, what used to be known as reserved matters. And they need to be submitted, because at the moment you basically have a blank canvas in terms of the detail of the application. You've got a red light site on a location in the countryside. Now, these are fairly standard. We tend to, on houses in the countryside, it's customary, when I say we, I mean the council, will usually impose 4 conditions about matters of detail. 1 in relation to layout for minor development, the second one in relation to design, the third one in relation to external appearance of the building or buildings, and the final one is relating to landscaping, including boundary treatment. So that is basically specifying which matters have to be covered in the further submission. So that's setting out in the conditions what the matters are that are specified within them, if you like, that have to be the subject of the further application. Now, you can, beyond that, obviously at this point in time, is if you feel it's necessary, given the context of the site, impose additional guiding conditions on materials or finishes or height of building, for example, single storey. But that would need to be considered necessary. If you don't do that, if you don't put on any guiding conditions, it then becomes a matter of discretion for the applicant to put in the proposal that they think is acceptable at that location, and then that's judged separately as a separate planning application. Now, in the event that's found to be unacceptable, that may come back to the local review body in due course. It depends how the decision's made. But you do have the option of doing that if you feel strongly about that. Beyond that, I would really just refer you to the Council Roads Planning Team Leader consultation response in pages 57 and 58 of your papers that recommends 8 conditions. Now, these are coded, unfortunately, so they don't really make too much sense looking at them off the page. And I'm quite happy to go through these just now and explain what it is that they mean. There's nothing unduly onerous in there. Again, it's a fairly standard thing. So if I can just get my page here. The suggested conditions are the 8 numbered at the top of page 58. So when it says C103, that is a condition requiring provision of a lay-by at the side of the road prior to works commencing, that lay-by being 9 metres along the back and with a gradient of 1 in 40 from the road so that it drains. Second condition is that a 3.5 metre wide vehicle access is taken off the rear of that lay-by, and that just enables cars to kind of go on the lay-by and get off the public road without causing obstruction. Again, a fairly standard thing for houses in the countryside. Third suggested condition is just that the access has trapped and drained facility to cope with surface water, so that surface water doesn't drain out onto the public road, which is an offence in terms of the Road Scotland Act. And again, it is a sloping site above that minor road, so there may be an issue there if it's not trapped and drained. The fourth condition there is in relation to access gradients. So in relation to the vehicle access to the dwelling house, the access gradient for the first 5 metres shall not be greater than 8%, which is a 1 in 12.5 slope. Your fifth recommended condition from the batch that you've got on page 58 relates to visibility areas. Again, that's a function of observed traffic speeds. Looking for visibility splays measured 2.4 metres back from the edge of that road along the line of the access and measuring 70 metres in either direction. So you've basically got 2 large triangles of land in theory. Recommended condition 6, C124, is just to try and ensure that those visibility displays are kept clear from obstruction for the lifetime of the development. And 7 on page 58 just covers the requirement to surface vehicle access for the first 5 metres from the public road to try and prevent dirt and other materials going onto it as well. And the final condition there is in relation to parking and turning provision, so that you have that within the curtilage of the dwelling house itself. I don't honestly think, looking at it, I don't think you would need any more. That's a total of 14 conditions. I don't think there's anything necessary beyond that. It just becomes a question of if you feel that there should be conditions that guide the kind of design, finishes, mass scale or anything else about the proposed dwelling house you'd want to see at that site. But again, that would need to meet the 6 tests set out in Circular 4 of 1998, so it would need to be considered to be necessary at this location particularly.
Councillor Drysdale, does that satisfy your requests? And I'm also going to say, do you think it's necessary? I wouldn't suggest, or my feeling is it's not necessary at this stage to put any design implications to the client, but to leave that in the hands of the planners to let them deal with that at the time, rather than complicating matters.
Yes, I'd probably take your guidance. Thank you, Robert, for that detailed explanation of the additional conditions that go in as part of this anyway. So that's helpful. And yeah, I think you're right. We're not planning officers, so I don't think it's up to us. And I'm sure the client and the applicant are quite aware as to what is surrounding them and what exists there already. So that's up to them. I would agree. So yeah, happy to go with the recommendation as it stands, and just take your point of view, Chair, and also we've taken on board Councillor Jordan's valid points as well. So happy to proceed if that's acceptable. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah, so the conditions imposed by the roads department are sensible and they should be included. And regards to the materials used and the way the house is going to look, I think is something that will be considered by the applicants and then obviously by any planning committees thereafter, and then that's a different matter, isn't it? So I don't think, like Councillor Drysdale said, we need to say that the house needs to look a certain way or be a certain size or anything, because that's something that can be agreed at a later date. But obviously the conditions about the imposed by the roads ought to be attached, as well as the ones that Robert has suggested about timings, the usual ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And just to give my piece, in agreement with both of those, both of you, so it's unanimous. So I'm going to say that the planning application has been accepted.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just confirm that members have agreed to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve the application. And what I was picking up there, correct me if I'm wrong, was to include the standard conditions for a planning application in principle, but not to include the guiding conditions. Is that correct?
Robert?
Yes, that's correct. And the 8 roads conditions on page 58 of the papers.
Right, thank you, councillors. We'll move on to the second item on our agenda today, but we'll just give 30 seconds for the chamber to clear. Okay. If members are ready, I'll hand over to Robert for this next application, and then Tracy will immediately go into her clerk's appointments notes. It's okay, Robert is looking for the information.
Apologies, Chair. I think I've got what I'm looking for now. So in relation to this case, Chair, this was also at the local review body meeting, which took place on Thursday, the 15th of May this year. You determined that you required further information at that stage to enable you to determine the review. It was noted at the meeting of the 15th of May that the local review body members were also seeking further information from the applicant, including the following matters. So that was further information in the form of a business plan, which would help to determine whether or not it had been demonstrated that there was an essential need for a dwelling house to support a business need at that rural location to comply with National Planning Framework 14. So if I just look up the case itself, I should be able to give you the relevant dates. So that request was sent out on the 4th of July, and we had a fairly quick response from the agent. I think from memory it was the 7th of July, and that's the additional information that's in front of you in the supplementary pack today. Otherwise, all of the documents are as they were at the 15th of May on the agenda, so you have some additional information in front of you today, Chair. But otherwise, same papers as part of the 15th of May meeting.
Thank you, Robert. I'll hand over to Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. So the grounds for refusal in your original papers were found on page 976, and that was the proposal is contrary to Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Development Plan 2, Policy H3, Housing in the Countryside and the related supplementary guidance, and MPF 4 Policies 9 and 17, which permits the erection of new houses in the countryside only in particular circumstances. Specifically, the proposal is not considered to represent beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, as the house is not essential for the needs of agriculture or other business requiring a rural location. The house is not associated with the succession planning of a viable farm holding, and the house would not meet the requirements of beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. So as previously outlined at the meeting in May, the main issues for the local review body to consider: the applicant's agent has submitted late information on the 30th of April 2025 as a response to the comments from the Council's appointed officer. This appears in your papers, pages 893 to 897. It was advised that this document could not have been submitted earlier due to a family bereavement. On that basis, would members be minded to take this submission into consideration? Would the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan in principle? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP2 Policy H3 and the guidance set out in the adopted LTP2 supplementary guidance in relation to the principle of the proposed development at this application site? Would the proposal fail to comply with MPF 4 Policies 9 and 17? Could the proposal be considered to represent the appropriate and beneficial development of a brownfield site as defined in the glossary within MPF 4, where a return to a natural state has not or will not happen without intervention? It is set out within MPF 4 Policy 17 that development proposals for all new home proposals would require to be suitably scaled, sited and designed and be in keeping with the character of the area. Is it agreed that the proposed dwelling house is not essential for the needs of agriculture or other businesses requiring a rural location? If it's not considered that the proposal does not accord with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, on what grounds would such a decision be made, and what reasons would members give for such a decision if it was considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? If members are minded to reverse the appointed officer's decision and grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? If members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required, and which additional policies, if any, would be referenced? The options you have available to you are that you can decide you have sufficient information before you to enable a determination of the review today, request further information in the form of written representations, specifying who will provide the information and what information you are seeking, resolve to hold a hearing, specifying who will be invited to speak and on what matters, resolve to hold a site visit accompanied or unaccompanied, which can be done in conjunction with any of the above and not allow a decision to be made today. And if the local review body resolves that it has sufficient information and that no further procedure is required, then you have the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination, and the decision notice will include a statement on the terms at which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. Your planning advisor is still present here, as per the previous case, was not the appointed officer or the case officer, and is here to provide information on matters of planning, law, policy or process, and your solicitor is still present today to provide advice on matters of law. Members received the supplement pack, and if members wish to discuss any of the information contained within that pack, then we would require to adopt the resolution to exclude the public in terms of section 50A4 and paragraph 6, part 1 of schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. I'll now pass back to the Chair to continue to lead the debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. First off, I'll ask if both members have got the pack and read the pack sufficiently, which nodding your head, Emma, means you haven't, or you haven't got the pack.
No, sorry, Chair. Please, could you resend me the pack, please, Tracy?
What I will do is, whilst that's happening, I'll take a 10-minute recess that you can get the pack and read it. And that gives me a chance also just to brief up on some of the notes of that pack, okay? So I'll just call a
Thank you.
10-minute recess.
Thank you.
Live, thank you.
Councillors, if you want to put on your video again, then I know that you're both there. Yeah, welcome back. Councillor Jordan, have you had time to find the papers and read them?
I've had time to find the papers and read them. Thank you very much.
Councillor Drysdale, I'll ask you the same question.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I had the papers online last night and I actually found my hard copy this morning, well, at lunchtime, and I'd actually gone through them again before the meeting this afternoon because I'd made quite a lot of notes at the last meeting, which I've got hold of. So I've subsequently made more notes from that. So I feel I've got the information I need to go ahead with this meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, councillors. On the back of what we did today, do you think we've got enough information to proceed with this just now? Or I'm going to suggest, do you want a site visit for this particular site? Because it was, at the time when it came to council, if I remember rightly, it was very contentious, and the fact that we had the notes, we couldn't make any decisions, but there were issues around the actual potential siting of any dwellings and buildings and what was there. So I will pass over to you, Councillor Drysdale, if you want to suggest something.
No, thanks very much, Chair. I appreciate you taking the lead on that because there were a few things that just were not sitting quite right with me in terms of feeling too comfortable about this application. I wanted to say a few things and I hope that's okay for me to proceed. So I do actually think that it's possibly now justifiable in terms of the succession planning, now that we've seen the detailed business report. It's very important to look at businesses across South West Scotland. So, but that's not a material planning way to assess planning as a whole. So I note that we can't look at just the succession planning as one individual item. I think there's many things where at this point in the proceedings, now that we've got that plan, that it's not contrary to LDP 2 policy H3. However, there's two things that I think we need further information about, as well as potentially, yes, I would consider possibly a site visit as well, because this is a very interesting case. It's an ex-site of sort of metal buildings, so it's very different to the redevelopment or redesign of a farm. It's a completely different style of business. So the thing that I feel we need more information on is the scale. We always talk about scale, density and palette being in keeping when we look at frameworks and policies and LDP2 and H3, etc., and housing in the countryside. To me, the scale and the actual plans we're seeing in front of us, I don't feel we've got the full list of information, and I'd be really interested to see if you two councillors here today felt the same, because if we were to override the decision of officers, we would need to be comfortable that the scale and density was in keeping with what's already there. And I'm seeing a 2.5, 3-story building with part of it being obviously it's a demolition of a building because it's no longer in use, but that we could be seeing a 3-story. And it's very difficult for me to see that with regards to what is already there. So my gut feeling is, yes, I would support a site visit to have a look at that. But I'd also like to know, probably from the case officer through yourself, if that's okay, Chair, to ask Robert, if what we are seeing in this original pack is still what is being submitted as the actual house design. So I suppose there's a question in there, but also I feel I've probably made my points clearly enough. I think there's many points in this pack where we could overthrow it, but it's just the scale and density that I have problems with. So therefore I would second you on a site visit, Chair. Thanks. But just if you could answer me that question, Robert, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
I'll come in with Robert first, Emma, and then get to you.
Thanks, Chair. If I can go back to the original papers that went to the meeting on the 15th of May 2025, these are obviously still relevant to this case because they form part of the information in front of you. So the original proposal, as it was submitted, is shown in pages 901 to 971, and that's of the papers of the 15th of May. So when I'm looking through this, as I'm doing just now, and scrolling down, There's quite a lot of text to begin with, but then it actually comes on to the detail of the application. But before that, you've got images showing the context of the site. So that's starting on pages 955, then continuing through 956. So you can see 956, you can see the first image of the building that would be replaced, if you like, by the dwelling house. And that continues on through page 957 as well. And then you've got page 958, which shows that building compared with the glass houses on the left. So that gives a degree of context to it. But in terms of the detail of the proposal, the proposed dwelling house, what you're looking at, the particular plans that have been submitted start on pages, I think it's 965. You've got the site plan there, so you can see the proposed dwelling house in relation to its surroundings, and you can see how the proposed cartilage would work. You've then got a space, and then the next page number I think I have is 967, so that's got the proposed elevations of the dwelling house, which shows the scale of it as well, and then you've got floor plans too. So what you're looking at is there's a bit of a split level element to this that you can see, and that's probably best demonstrated by the elevations looking northwest and southeast, which are kind of end on, if you like, showing the gable ends, and then you've got the rear extensions. So from the kind of tallest elevation, if you want to call it that, the one with the balcony on it, it would read as a kind of two-storey house with accommodation in the roof space, and it's got dormer windows there. Then you've got a single-storey wing in it as well. So that's obviously a change in mass and scale and height compared with the existing building. You do have something that looks quite different. You've then got cross-sectional drawings further in the papers. I think it's pages 969 as well, which show that. So I think, sorry, there's another one as well. There's a cross-section through the site showing the house superimposed, which is on page 971. So in sum total, I think you do have enough information there of what's proposed, like as a house. It's just a question of whether you feel you've got enough contextual information there to kind of compare it to its surroundings, if you like.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to go with consensus if you want to do a site visit. I think we've probably got enough information in the papers, but I'm happy to do that. The question I was going to ask, though, of Robert or of Tracy is, because there's only three of us, how would that work? Because, you know, who would be able to attend the site visit and then do the subsequent meeting, the reconvened meeting afterwards? Thank you.
It would be the three of us, and then the three of us, but I'll let Robert justify that.
Actually, I need to defer to the clerk in this issue.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it would just be the three of you. It has to be the members that have completed the whole process, so all the reconvened meetings and the site visits. Thanks.
Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, sorry, were you waiting for me to come back on that, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, obviously that's, you know, that's quite low numbers, but I'm happy to go along with what you guys want, so thank you.
Councillor Drysdale.
Okay, I'm going to be devil's advocate here. Sorry. Now that Robert's explained that a bit more in detail to me, and looking at the plan from above down, and the fact that, am I right in saying some of it's embedded into the ground, which reduces the height size, as you've explained, and now I'm looking at it on the plan with regards to the other buildings, I'm probably a bit more comfortable with it and might retract my offer to support you in a site visit and ask if Emma wants to do that, if Councillor Jordan wants to do that, as I probably feel we've got enough information now that I've had that discussion and further thought. Sorry for changing my mind, everyone, in that I think we could probably reverse the decision, because I think we've seen the business case, which is justifiable as successful succession planning. I don't think it's contrary to LDP 2 policy H3, as it does require people on site and does meet the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site in particular. The design, now I feel the scale, now I would know a bit more about it, now that I know the client has rescaled it. So the design, scaling and palette is in keeping with what's there. And number 4, what have I written here? it is it's suitable in scale, form and density in reference to MPF policy 17 regarding beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. So I think I would be happy to overthrow it, but obviously if you, my fellow councillors, feel we need a site visit, then I have understanding as to that. But I think Robert's gone through it in a little bit more detail, which makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about it. And I do think the client has taken on board the officer and the paper's recommendations as to what materials, etc., were to be used. And I don't think in this instance it would be easy to redesign or make a house out of one of these pre-army sheds, unlike a farm building or a stone building on a site. So probably it's a slightly different case than we're normally used to. Don't think we've had a, well, not in my time, a house built on a site such as, a potential for a house to be built on a site such as this before, Chair. So really keen to hear what the two of you think to my slightly reverse decision there. Thank you.
Councillor Jordan, let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councillor Drysdale in that I think we've probably got enough information in front of us and we don't need a site visit. I'm undecided at the moment, would like to hear more from perhaps you as well, Chair, just about what you think about the application. Yeah, I've not got much to add at this stage. I just want to listen and hear what you've got to say. But I can see that Councillor Drysdale makes some good points. Thank you.
Okay. As it happens, as it's not in my shire, if you want to call it, I know the centre because I've been there a few times over my lifetime. But I'm quite happy not to go on a site visit. My next question is, do we have enough information, and do you want the next part, which is the exempt item, which deals with the finances, do you want to have that in public, or do you want it in private session? Emma?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think we've got enough information, but I would like to go over the information in private that we were sent that was exempt, if that's okay, please. Thank you.
And are you in agreement, Councillor Drysdale?
Yes, I'm very grateful for that exempt financial information that we've received in detail, but I do think we should discuss that in private. I am in agreement with Councillor Jordan on that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, that will be unanimous. I'll agree as well, so we'll have this section in private. believe we're live again. So what I'll do is I'll bring in Robert just to give a little bit of a brief about this. Okay.
Thanks, Chair. If it's helpful, you have supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside, and that's supplementary guidance adopted relative to Local Development Plan 2, which was adopted, I think it was October 2019. There is part of that document, 3.0, looks at agricultural or rural business need, and it might be helpful if you look at paragraphs 3.4 to 3.7 of that document. I won't read it out, but if you want me to, I can do so, and that's basically providing further detail in relation to the policy position on rural business need. You've obviously got an extra submission in front of you that you've asked for to give you extra to look at in relation to the question of, is this an essential business need for a dwelling house at this location? So you might find that helpful.
I'll ask actually Robert to read it out because we've got so many leaflets here finding it. Okay.
So looking at 3.4 of that document, it says this part of the policy also acknowledges that there are particular circumstances when a new house in the rural area is required to accommodate a full-time worker who is employed in a business that requires a rural location, where the nature and demands of the work concerned make it essential for the person engaged in the business to live at or very close to the site of their work. For newly established businesses, long-term viability must be demonstrated. If the council is not satisfied in relation to the long-term viability, a temporary permission may be granted for a non-permanent form of housing in the interim period. Then moving on to 3.5, it says the presence of a business in the rural area is not in itself sufficient justification for a house. The material factors which will determine whether there is a genuine need for a new house include, first bullet point, the scale, viability and detail of the farming business operation. Second bullet point, the labour requirements including the need for specialist workers and the level of attention needed outside normal hours. And third bullet point, the existing residential accommodation available to the farm or business and other development opportunities on the farm or land holding. Paragraph 3.6 of that guidance says, in either instance, favourable consideration will only be afforded to those proposals where the applicant is able to demonstrate that, firstly, a new house is essential for the proper functioning of the farm, rural business, and there is a clearly established need for a worker to be readily available at most times. Secondly, there is clear evidence that the proposed enterprise has been planned on a sound financial basis and that the farm/rural business is economically viable. Thirdly, the need relates to a full-time farm worker or one who is mainly involved in agriculture or the running of the rural business. Fourthly, there is no appropriate available alternative accommodation or economically viable development opportunities available on the land holding associated with the farm or rural business. And fifthly, the need for a house is not a direct consequence of the recent severance of a house from the agricultural holding and its resultant loss to agriculture or the rural business, except when severance arises as a result of a compulsory purchase order. For the purposes of the policy, recent severance is taken to be 10 years from completion of the house that is being severed from the land holding. And the final paragraph I think is helpful in this case is 3.7, where it says justification is required to demonstrate that the worker is required to be on site permanently to operate the farm/rural business. A clear statement should be provided why a new dwelling is essential in operational terms. This should relate to the farming or business operations only, and personal circumstances should be discounted. If one or more dwellings already exist on the unit, detailed evidence should normally be provided explaining why a further dwelling house is necessary in operational terms over and above existing. For example, if a labour requirement calculation demonstrates a need for, say, 6 full-time staff, detailed evidence should be provided explaining the essential operation for any of those 6 staff to live on site. Security is unlikely to be sufficient justification for an essential worker, as this service can be provided without the need for a residence. So like I say, those paragraphs are all contained within the supplementary guidance relating to housing in the countryside, and that might, I think, Chair, help your consideration when you're looking at the issue of rural business need, which is why you asked for the business plan and associated calculations. Thanks, Chair.
Now, does that help? Because I know it's rural business, and different parts of the country, rural businesses are different sized. They're not always massive, and sometimes they're just small. So, do either of you have any thoughts at this point? Pauline? No, Emma, do you want to come in?
Emma first, thanks.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Chair. I'm just thinking about, obviously, security cannot be a consideration for accepting a planning permission on its own. Although I know that security is a big thing for rural businesses, and particularly farms and garden centres with the stuff that they have, the big heavy stuff. So I know that there's a need to look after the plants, and Chair, you'd mentioned that we're in an environmental situation where perhaps things need more attention, but I suppose I just want to understand a little bit more about what makes this dwelling house essential for someone to be there to support the business. So I'm aware that there are other things like deliveries and that sort of thing, which perhaps could be considered, deliveries that come outside of the usual operating hours. So I just want to understand that a little bit more, really, because obviously security can't be considered. So it's where I am at the moment. Thank you.
Pauline?
Thank you very much, Chair. Through yourself, just to ask Robert, you've gone through all those points, 3.4 to, was it 3.9? And in my opinion, the business meets those, apart from, I'm sorry with my confusion, but was it 3.8 or 3.9? There's not much information in the papers with regards to the labour. Am I right in saying that? Do we, as members, need a little bit more information as to, so we're being controversial because we're going round in circles a bit here, which is a bit unfair, but that's just the way of meetings sometimes with regards to LRB. So just some guidance on that, Robert, with regards to, should we three members be a little bit, if we can't, quite rightly you've noted, we can't look at security or safety of either the plants, the equipment, machinery, and the plant pots and the deliveries. It's irrelevant in LRB and in planning terms. So it has to be the labour and the suitability of the requirement of an additional business for a family, stroke workers, or a person to be on site. So would we not be slightly breaking protocol if we didn't have a labour report? That's really my question. Thanks.
Pauline, well, I don't know if it's probably relevant, but if you look at page 748, I was just looking through this, and there is some information about the previous case officer who used to be Billy Murray. As you know, he has now retired, and it does talk about the family, I believe. So if you want to look at that, but I will bring in Robert to maybe give you a little bit of a response.
Thanks, Chair. Just looking at the additional information, so the exempt document pack that you've got in front of you, comprising the submitted business plan that you had asked for to try and demonstrate essential rural business need. There's part of that, it's page 16 of those papers, which has underlined justification for on-site residency. So that's what the applicants come forward with. I think it's then relevant to consider that rather against the parts of the supplementary guidance that I've outlined, particularly paragraphs 3.4, 3.5, 3.6 and 3.7, because that looks at rural business need. paragraph 3.3 of the same guidance makes it clear that agriculture and horticulture businesses, I would take this to be horticulture, are considered to be appropriate, but that doesn't automatically mean there's going to be a rural business need just based on its type. In answer to the question about a labour requirement assessment, that's based in SAC standards set out in the Farm Management Handbook. That's quite a long-standing thing, and it goes back to looking at the Scottish Government. You used to be CIRAD's labour units per year, and I forget what that would be, but that would be an assessment of a farm unit, and based on the activities and the acreage and the number of stock, you could come up with a calculation as to how many full-time workers in theory you would need to work in that unit. It's different in this case because it's a garden centre, so part of it's horticultural, part of it's retail, part of it will be due to the tea room there and various other activities as well. So rather than a farm, it's really a rural business that's considered to be appropriate in the rural area. I think the question is, on the basis of the information you've got, does that meet the criteria that I've outlined in terms of rural business need? So I don't think, because it's not a farm business, I don't think it is necessary to have a kind of labour requirement assessment. If you feel that the justification you've had is inadequate in any way, then you can always go back to the applicant and look for more. But I'm just conscious that we've gone back already to the applicant and asked for information to justify rural business need here, and that's what's in front of you. So yes, you could go back and ask for additional information, but you'd maybe need to be careful in terms of what particularly you were asking for. What is it you're looking for? How, if you're looking to be persuaded, what would that comprise? What information would you be looking for?
Thank you, Robert. Just to maybe go over a point that Pauline has said on page 16, as Robert referred to page 16, the last paragraph, the growth of the business. And being a horticultural business, it doesn't necessarily follow the usual patterns of businesses from 95. So do either of you have any comments on that? Pauline? No.
No, well, sorry, Chair, I will come in. I feel a bit more comfortable now that Robert's gone through all of those points. And obviously on page 748, you've drawn us to the key issues in point 10, whereby there are a number of active people within the business and a family. And also we see, and we now have more knowledge with regards to business in terms of the diverse operations that they're carrying out, from the cafe to the play area to the plants. It's not just a horticultural business, it's a bit more extensive than that, shall we say. And being a business owner myself, I know the amount of people you need to operate food sides of any business, and delivery times, which can be quite sporadic. So I still think I'd possibly be happy to support my proposal, which would be that I would reverse the decision of the planning officer in this instance without a site visit. But I'm happy to take your views, Chair, and obviously yours, Councillor Jordan, and support you as well.
Emma, do you have anything further to add?
No, I'm not at the moment. I mean, I suppose I'm just trying to understand what the need is to have someone living there. That's what I'm struggling with. I know that it's a full-on business. I know that it takes a lot of work, a lot of care. I know that there's lots of good plans, and it's a loved business, and that's all great. But I suppose I just need to understand why do we, because obviously we're putting a dwelling house to support the business. That's what the idea is. So just want to understand how that fits in with the planning regulations as to, I'm just a little bit, I just not sure I quite understand that yet. But thank you, sorry.
Okay, my view on this is not a traditional business where you do work from 8 to a certain hour of 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Horticulture and agriculture are effectively really 24-hour operation daily. You can't believe, or you can't expect nature to be work to your plans. So I can understand why you might want to live there, because if something happens that is outside of the working hours, you need to deal with it straight away. And that would be my take. Yes, it's, as from what I've read, if it's a business which needs to grow, you need to have people there. And from what was printed on page 748, which was clearly quite a few years ago, the owners are getting older. So what do you do if you've got staff who are getting older? And can understand that, because I've been in that situation, and you want to replace that manpower or work power with other human beings, because you really do need to have succession planning in a horticultural business or any agricultural business. I'm going to ask Robert one more time if there's any more advice that you could give us on this particular issue.
Thanks, Chair. If it was a case I was looking at, and obviously I'm advising you today, clearly your first point of reference is the relevant policy of the council. If it's part of the development plan, if it's not, then you're looking at the national planning framework. And this is particularly in relation to MPF 4 policy 17. The supplementary guidance relates to LDP2 policy H3 housing in the countryside. And the question here is, you look for that extra information that's been submitted and which you've considered to help demonstrate or help determine whether or not it's been demonstrated that there's an essential need for a dwelling house at this point in time. So if I was looking at that, I would then look at the submission you've got and then compare it against the kind of paragraphs that are read out, if you like, and you have to decide if you feel that the criteria are met or not. And if you don't feel that that criteria is met, then there isn't an essential need for the dwelling house. I think the most helpful thing is the supplementary guidance, because it goes into a level of detail that policy H3 just doesn't do, and MPF 4 policy 17 doesn't. So that would certainly be my main reference, which is why I would read it out. But at the end of the day, it's a judgment call as to whether or not you feel this departs from the terms of the development plan, and if it does depart from the terms of the development plan, do you refuse planning permission for it, or do you have reasons to make an exception to the development plan that you can justify and grant planning permission on that basis? So it's really a judgment call based on the information you've got. Obviously, your other option is, if you feel there's information that's lacking, or you want further process, then you can do that as well. At this stage, you don't need to determine the case today. You can ask for further process.
Thank you, Robert. Almost at an impasse here, but I'll bring in you, Pauline.
Thank you very much, Chair. This has been a difficult one, and I think Robert's been really helpful in me coming to my decision. I think we got a supplementary pack, which was very helpful, and I think when Robert read out 3.4 to, was it 3.8, I've made notes on all of that, and I think it's met most of those policies, even including the Labour report. Now we went back to page 248, and there was a bit more detail there, and obviously we need to look at businesses as a whole, whether they're horticultural or agricultural, and the amount of people they can employ and potentially employ, and the needs that can be serviced within a community. So I would propose that we reverse the decision, Chair, and this committee. And I do see that it's not contrary to LDP policy H3 housing in the countryside, as it does meet the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, and also the applicant has adjusted the plans accordingly. And it seems to be a good design and palette, and is in keeping with what's already there. And finally, it is a suitable in density and scale and form, and I refer to NPF 4 policy 17, whereby we look at the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. So that would be my rough wording if the governance officer was able to help me with that. And obviously you were in agreement, chairs, or Councillor Jordan, and also with Robert's guidance. So I'd be happy to take feedback on that, but I do think that we've had a good discussion on this one. We've got a better understanding of the case now. So really that's what I would propose today. Thank you, members.
I'll bring in Laura just now.
Thank you, Chair, through yourself. It was just to clarify on the supplementary guidance 3.6, where it says that it will only be afforded to those proposals where the applicant is able to demonstrate that, then there's a colon. And if you look between the second last and last bullet point, there's a semicolon and. Now, from normal interpretation of legislation and policy, that would suggest that all of the bullet points have to be satisfied for that test to be met. And it was just a word of caution because I had noted that Councillor Drysdale had said she had felt that most of them were satisfied. My reading of 3.6 is that it has to be all of those have to be satisfied in order for this to comply with supplementary guidance to H3.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Before you come in, Pauline, my thought would be that at this stage we would require more information to make that decision, because clearly there is only 3 of us here, so I don't want to be put in the position where we've got to flip a coin, if you want to call it. But I'd rather have more information to determine this application. But Emma, do you want to come in?
I'm not sure what more information we would need, to be honest. I just think we need to make sure we understand the criteria, and do we need to meet all of that criteria? And if so, do we? Because I'm not sure we do. Or do we just need to meet certain points? So I think we need to clarify that, but I'm not sure what more information. I mean, I know it's a difficult decision and it's a difficult conversation. We just, you know, it's hard when there's only 3 of us. But I think that we probably have got the information. It's just, we've got to work through it. But, you know, if there's something you think we need, I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the paragraph that has been pointed out, and just to mention something. It says a full-time farm worker. This is not a farm, this is a horticultural business. So is the distinction between a farm worker and a horticultural business, does that determine that you've actually got enough? I want to just bring in Laura on that point.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the supplementary guidance at page 9 of the supplementary guidance, on the bullet point it says the needs relate to full-time farm worker or one who's mainly involved in agriculture or the running of the rural business. That I would say that it's not just if it's a full-time farm worker. I read that as a full-time farm worker or one, so it would be a full-time or one who's mainly involved in the running of the rural business.
Okay, so it is clearly a rural business, but do we know whether or not this extra person, and in relation to what has been said, that if the business wants to expand, does it take on the full-time worker, or are there enough people there already to justify the fact that that full-time worker needs to be on site? That seems to be the question, and from what you were saying, Pauline, you were saying nearly. Does that actually fit in to your view of this now? Pauline?
Sorry, Chair, for the delay. I think because I've only noted these down, I don't have them in front of me. I would want to check with, it's very difficult to ask either Laura or Robert if they think it meets all the criteria. You know, if there's a cafe and a play area and plants, there's got to be quite a number of employees. We don't have that detail. So I suppose it is back to my earlier point. Is it the number of employees and the need for one person to be on site? I think the argument for any business nowadays is that you need, if it's of that size, you'd need somebody on site. If it's a privately run business with space required, it's not a tiny wee cafe and with a street frontage. So it's really difficult for us as members, because in the meantime we're having these discussions, we don't have the time to go and research. So we are very much reliant on Robert and Laura here. And I think it's important, as you say, we don't want to make an error. Councillor Jordan's alluded to that. So could I ask if Laura is able to say to us if she thinks it meets all the criteria, or are we not allowed to do that? I don't want to break protocol here. That's my fear. Or if Robert's able to tell us that, thanks.
I can almost tell you that, but I'll bring in Robert.
I was going to ask, Chair, I'm conscious that this meeting's taking place in Microsoft Teams. Would it be helpful if I shared this part of the supplementary guidance on the screen at the moment so it could be seen? And then I think it might be wise to go through it point by point, you know, comparing your understanding of what's in front of you with what this part of the policy says. Would that be something you'd be happy for me to do, Chair?
Yeah, please. I think that both of you are in agreement. Yes, thank you, Robert.
Okay, thanks. Now, I can zoom in slightly on this. I'm not the most technologically advanced person in the world, but hopefully you can see that in front of you just now. And I'll try and zoom in slightly to make it clearer. But the 5 bullet points in question appear on your screen in front of you at 3.6. So it might be worth, I mean, those are the tests, if you like, set out in the supplementary guidance, which forms part of the development plan. So it might be worth looking at that framework now that it can be seen, and just going through it all and deciding whether or not you feel you have enough information which addresses those points. From my perspective, I haven't been through that analysis myself. I haven't looked at it and thought about it in that way, but that might be quite a valid way forward. I don't know what you think, Chair, or whether Laura Whitelaw would have any further comments on that.
If, through yourself, Chair, if I could suggest that members also look at the supplementary pack at page 16, where it's entitled Justification for On-Site Residency, where the applicant has laid out their case for why they believe that on-site residence is required. And I would suggest that that should be compared against that list to see whether or not that provides you with the information on which to base your decision.
Thank you, Laura. And after that, maybe we should start with bullet point 2, which there is clear evidence that the proposed enterprise has been planned on a sound financial basis. I'm afraid I can't read it all because I have to read it from Robert's. Rural business and family economical. So should we start with that one there? Because if we can justify that, then we can maybe, or have an argument with that, we could then better understand the others. Emma.
I'm sorry. I'm trying really hard to understand and not be awkward, but I know you've asked us to look at point 2, but I'm looking at point 1 because I think that's probably the one that needs to be answered. Well, I'm struggling to answer that one. A new house is essential for the proper functioning of a farm, rural business, and there is a clearly established need for a worker to be readily available at most times. I know that you've responded to that, Tony, and Pauline has spoken on that, but I'm still not sure. I mean, I know that you might need X amount of full-time staff, X amount of part-time staff, but I just don't know. I mean, I can understand that on a farm with animals that might need checking at night time. It's just, I'm not sure with regards to a cafe that people won't be in at night time and a greenhouse with plants growing. I appreciate that there are going to sometimes be windy weather or stuff that people might need to attend to. It's not a regular occurrence. So I'm just still not sure on that point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. Pauline, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's probably difficult because I am involved in an outside catering business and catering, so know the delivery schedules are so difficult, but that's not horticultural, so I don't know how that operates. What I do know is that businesses do have a lot of challenges nowadays. Greenhouses, storms, floods, we're all dealing with constant emergencies when, well, people are, when running business enterprises with all the additional pressures that are on people nowadays. So I know we're not allowed to consider antisociable hours, theft, vandalism, etc. But if you've got cookers on site, hot water boilers, plants, running water, then I would say you are going to be running backwards and forwards quite a lot. There's no livestock as such because it's not a farm shop with beasts. I get that. It's not a kennels with animals, so I suppose that's slightly different. But I possibly have more allegiance towards supporting this because I know what it's like to run anything that involves catering, which is not plants, but it's not about I suppose that's my personal experience, and perhaps I'm not allowed to bring that forward in terms of planning. But I suppose there are always emergencies to deal with, and I'm a little bit more sympathetic. So, you know, and this is a growing family here that we're looking at. So, and with a lot of different aspects to this business, it's not just horticulture. It seems to be a farm shop and a play area. So I think possibly I have a little bit more empathy towards that one. But do we need an actual document on it as well as the exempt paper? I'd probably have to seek guidance from yourself, Chair, on that. I know we're having difficulties with this. So are we overcomplicating it? Possibly, but it is difficult because we've just jumped from an agricultural case to this one. So they're both entirely different. I can't say. I think it meets the needs of all the rest. And if the lawyer, Laura's saying it's got to meet absolutely all of those, which I hadn't realised, then it does make it difficult. But I think it probably does need somebody there full time, even if it's just one person. But do we need to have that in writing? Do we need to see that it needs one person there 24 hours a day for the alarm system, etc.? I'm not sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Pauline. It's coming back into my mind that this was one of the reasons why I was considering a site visit, because this particular business, horticulture or whatever, is complex. And do we actually need to physically go down to see it ourselves to understand the full scope of that decision? I don't want to be put into the position where I'm going to have to do a casting vote when I feel that there are circumstances where the 5 bullet points can be met, and we could argue it. The financial statement makes it clear that this is a business which is making money. Will it grow? Will it not grow? Does that depend on the building? So that is, I'm going to put that back out there, whether or not you actually think we should in fact go and do a site visit and not try and determine this today. Pauline, do you want to start?
Yeah, okay. Totally hear you, Chair, and I think it's important for me to listen to my fellow councillors and go with gut reaction, and I'm very much hearing that you think that's necessary, so I'll reverse my decision and support you on a site visit to save you going to a vote. So, and I understand where you're coming from. Thanks, Chair.
Before I bring you in, Emma, I'll bring in Laura.
Chair, thank you. It was just a point of information. It was actually noted by my colleague here, Mr Dawson. On page 15, in connection with the coffee shop, it says that that is currently leased to a third party, so it's not actually the applicant who's got the responsibility of running the coffee shop on the site. Whether that plays into any of your considerations.
Does that make a difference? But Emma, you haven't had a chance to speak on the issue of a site visit, so I'll let you have a chance now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think we've got enough information, I do. But I am absolutely happy to go with the consensus. So if you both agree you'd like to do a site visit, I'm happy to support and go along too. But I think the problem is it's a very difficult decision, and I don't know if those questions that we've got will be answered by a site visit. But I'm happy to go along with the consensus.
I'll just bring in Robert briefly.
Thanks, Chair. I hear what you're discussing, and noting that, I'm just wondering if you're looking, given that this is an opportunity to set out further process, are you looking for anything else from the applicant at this point in time? I mean, the site visit can take place and you'll gain some kind of understanding of how things operate at the site through that. But are you wanting any further process? Are you wanting anything additional from the applicant at this point in time? Was what I was wondering, because you don't need to limit the additional process requirement to a site visit at this point in time. It could be, for example, a site visit followed by a hearing at which the applicant could be invited to appear to explain the rural business need. It's an option open to you. That was really my only question, Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Emma?
Yeah, thank you for that, Robert. Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I do think that we would need to hear from the applicant about, why someone is needed there overnight and full time. And whilst I respect my fellow councillors, Councillor Drysdale has similar experience, and I know that you, Chair, have a lot of knowledge and experience as well, but not on this business, not on this specific instance. So I think we probably need to hear from the applicant to tell us exactly why they're required. And obviously, I know they've told us about security, but I just feel like I still don't understand, because security can't be a factor. So we still need to understand a bit better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Pauline, are you in agreement with the conditions that Robert outlined? And I think also I would want more detail on the process of who is actually working and what what that entails, because it's not clear from what we've got. On you go, Pauline.
Yeah, 100%, Chair. Through yourself, I agree. I think we need some sort of, even if it's just a page, giving us a little bit more information as to how many people are involved in the business, what the sort of crisis situations could be, numbers, and where they're employed across the business. Just a little bit more detail so that we can make a decision that's more fair and justified. That would be helpful. Sorry it's taken so long to get to this point. So yeah, to a site visit.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I know it's maybe taken us a while, but I would rather not make a mistake at this stage, because there are only 3 of us, and I would rather get that information correct and make a decision on accurate and first-hand information. So we'll organise a site visit so we can do that, and Robert has details of what we really need to know, which is mostly to do with the staffing and potential business case. Okay, is that okay, Robert?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering at this point whether it's best just to arrange the site visit and then ask the applicant if they're able to provide a bespoke response to point 3.6. I'm conscious that the applicant's here and the applicant's agent will obviously have access to a recording of this meeting, so they'll have quite a clear idea of, I think, what it is you're looking for. But I think that seems to be the thing you're needing persuasion about, whether or not this proposal is actually meeting the terms of that paragraph of the supplementary guidance or not.
Thank you, Robert. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely agree with what Robert's recommending to the board, to get a report based on that 3.6. But it was just to clarify, there had been mention before of a hearing. That's a separate procedure. If you were looking to do a hearing where you actually wanted the applicant to be present, a site visit should really just be going out and looking at the site. If you're wanting the opportunity to have a discussion with the applicant, that would be under the hearing session rules, which is a different process. So it's just to have that clarity from you.
Thank you, Laura. I think that's good advice, and I think that's what we should do. But again, no doubt Robert can put that into the letter.
Okay, I'm just seeking clarification, Chair. I understand that it sounds like you're wanting to undertake a site visit, but you're also looking for further written information and then a hearing before you then determine the case. Is that right?
Chair, can I just clarify, so in the written submissions that you receive back from the applicant, you then want to be able to have the opportunity to ask the applicant questions on that written submission that they're going to provide? Can you clarify that?
I'll bring in Laura, because I think that's exactly what we're asking.
That's quite clear, Chair, and thank you for that clarity. It's we're going for the 3 options that are available to the local review body to enable them to determine, which is a site visit, and also at the same time a written procedure notice asking them to provide further information based on 3.6 of the supplementary guidance H3, and then thereafter a hearing, at which point it will give the parties all an opportunity to discuss that written submission with the applicant. Thank you, Chair.
Councillors, is that in agreement with your own views now at this stage?
Happy to agree, Chair.
Emma?
Yeah, happy to agree. Thank you.
Okay, I'll agree with that. So we'll do a site visit and as recommendation by Laura, so we can terminate this discussion now unless Tracy has something else to say.
No, Chair, just we'll capture all that, and this meeting's further adjourned, and the procedure notices will go out requesting the site visit, the further written submissions, and then we'll seek a date for the hearing and notify all members. Just a reminder that all 3 members will have to participate in the site visit and the hearing to allow for a decision to be made. Thanks, Chair.
I know it's been a long day for all of us and for everyone here. I think from reflection, I think that is probably the best decision we can do at this stage until we get that information. But Pauline, if you want to come in.
Well, thank you very much, members and officers. And just Tracy, if you can make sure, if need be, that give us a wee shout if you need our wellies and our umbrellas. Thank you.
Emma, do you want the last word or do you want me to say the last word? Right, okay.
Over to you. Thank you.
Given that we've got to this point, I will leave that in the hands of our officers and they'll get back to us so that they can decide when we're going to get a site visit. I would just say that it is unfortunate we've got to this stage, but I would rather that we make a decision based on accurate information. So thank you, members, and thank you for your participation. Thanks, bye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.